It was the smell that got me first. You don't expect it, a scent in your own house that doesn't belong. It wasn't Amanda's perfume, wasn't mine, and it sure as hell wasn't something I recognized. But there it was, lingering in the air like a secret waiting to be exposed. I had just gotten home from a late meeting, kicked off my shoes, and was about to pour a drink when I noticed it. Vanilla? No, something darker, muskier. The kind of smell that clings to skin after a long night. It hung there, stubborn and wrong, like it had woven itself into the fabric of our couch, our curtains, our life. I stood in the middle of our living room, keys still in hand, scanning the place like I'd walked into a stranger's home. There was nothing out of place, everything was exactly where it should be. But that scent? It didn't belong. And suddenly, I felt like I didn't either. My heart picked up its pace, drumming against my chest. I'd been gone for maybe 2 hours. Amanda wasn't home yet, out with her friends, she said, some last-minute dinner plan. I had no reason not to believe her, right? We didn't have that kind of relationship. But this smell, this goddamn unfamiliar scent, had me questioning everything in a heartbeat. I moved through the house like a detective in a crime scene, following the trail even though I wasn't sure what I was looking for. But there's this thing your gut does when something's off. It doesn't need facts, doesn't need evidence, it just knows. And mine was screaming. The bed. That's where it hit me the hardest. Our bed, the one we shared, now drenched in that foreign scent. I stood there, staring at it, my brain struggling to make sense of what my senses were already screaming. Had I imagined it? Maybe I was losing it. Maybe it was some new detergent she'd tried, or a candle I didn't notice before. I tried to shake it off, rationalize it away, but my gut wasn't having it. It was like being slapped in the face with something that hadn't fully formed yet, an invisible truth hovering just out of reach. And then I saw it, something small, almost insignificant. But in that moment, it was the only thing that mattered. A single strand of hair, draped across the pillow. Blonde. Amanda's hair was brown. I stared at it, the room closing in around me, and everything went quiet. You know how people say their whole life flashes before their eyes in a crisis? That's bullshit. The only thing that flashed before mine was the realization that I wasn't alone in my own life anymore. Someone had been here. And worse, someone else had been in my bed. I didn't touch the hair. I just stood there, staring at it. Blonde, straight, maybe 5 inches long, right there on my pillow like a taunt. I kept trying to make sense of it, but it felt like my brain was buffering. The logical side of me, whatever was left of it, started throwing out explanations. Maybe it was Amanda's friend, maybe someone had crashed here while I was out, or maybe Amanda got some highlights and forgot to mention it. But none of it fit. That smell, that hair, and the silence that seemed to press down on the whole house. I wasn't stupid. I knew what it looked like, but I wasn't ready to admit it, not yet. I grabbed my phone and texted Amanda, pretending everything was normal. Hey, what time are you coming home? I wrote, keeping it casual. 3 dots popped up. Then they disappeared. I stared at the screen, waiting, hoping for some quick response that would set my mind straight. But instead, nothing. She didn't text back. I don't know what possessed me, but I started searching. First the bed, pulling back the covers, looking for something more. I didn't know what exactly, but I was beyond thinking clearly. I was desperate for proof or, hell, maybe even something that would show I was wrong. Nothing there. I opened the closet next. All her clothes were where they should be. Shoes lined up neatly on the floor, dresses hanging in color-coded order, just like she liked it. Everything in its place. But then I checked the laundry basket. Buried under a few workout shirts and socks was a men's t-shirt I'd never seen before. Navy blue, plain, no logo. It wasn't mine. I lifted it out and held it up, like it might somehow explain itself. The thing felt heavy in my hand, like it had a story attached to it, but there were no answers. Just a foreign shirt in my home. That was it. That was all the confirmation I needed. My mind raced back to the last few weeks. The late dinners with her friends. The nights she'd come home, showered, and slipped into bed, saying she was too tired to talk. The way she'd brushed off sex like it was a chore. I told myself we were just in a rough patch. Everyone goes through them, right? But no. There it was, in my hand, evidence of what I'd been too blind or too trusting to see. She wasn't just tired. She was fucking someone else. I dropped the shirt back into the basket like it burned. My throat tightened, and I could feel this wave of heat rising up from my chest. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't even shock anymore. It was anger, boiling up so fast I didn't know what to do with it. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my keys and walked out the front door without even knowing where I was going. I needed air. I needed to think. But all I could think about was what I was going to do next. I didn't drive far, just circled the block a few times, trying to calm down. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel, but my mind was anything but steady. I kept replaying the last few minutes in my head, the hair, the shirt, the smell. Every time I thought about it, the anger surged again. After maybe 20 minutes, I parked back in front of the house. Her car was in the driveway. She was home. I walked in, and there she was, sitting on the couch, casually scrolling through her phone like nothing had changed. I stood there for a second, watching her, waiting for that sense of guilt to show on her face. But she didn't even look up at me. "You have a good time?" I asked, my voice already betraying my calm. She glanced up, smiled, and said, "Yeah, it was nice. We just had some wine at Katie's." "How was your meeting?" That was it, the last lie I could take. I tossed the keys onto the coffee table, and her smile faltered. She could sense it now. I wasn't playing along anymore. "Whose shirt is it?" Her eyes narrowed. "What shirt?" I didn't answer. I just stared at her. We both knew what I was talking about. She put her phone down, slowly. "What's going on?" I walked over to the laundry basket, pulled out the t-shirt, and threw it onto the couch in front of her. "This. Who does it belong to?" She didn't say anything for a second. Then she reached for it, trying to act casual, but her hand was shaking. "I don't know. Maybe it's yours?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "It's not mine, Amanda." "Whose is it?" She looked at me, her eyes wide, like she couldn't believe we were having this conversation. But she still didn't answer. "So, this is what we're doing now? You're just gonna sit there and pretend nothing's happening? There's a strange shirt in our house, and you don't know how it got here?" "I don't know what you're accusing me of," she said, her voice rising. "You're acting like I'm some criminal. Maybe it's been there for weeks. Maybe a friend left it. I don't know." The excuses kept coming, faster now, but they didn't land. The more she talked, the more transparent it became. Her face was flushed, eyes darting around the room like she was searching for a way out, for some story that would make it all go away. "Cut the bullshit," I snapped. "I know what this is. I know what's going on." Her mouth opened, then closed, like she was still searching for words. But then she just stopped. She could see in my face that I wasn't buying it, not for a second. Finally, she broke. "All right, fine. Fine. You want the truth?" She stood up, arms crossed, glaring at me like I was the one out of line. It was a mistake. It meant nothing. I felt a rush of heat in my chest, my whole body tensing. A mistake? Yes. I wasn't planning it, okay? It just happened. It was stupid. I stood there, fists clenched at my sides, not sure what I'd expected her to say but hating every word that came out of her mouth. "Who?" I asked, barely keeping my voice steady. She hesitated again, like she didn't want to give me the full truth. Like maybe if she held back that last piece, it wouldn't be as bad. But eventually, she whispered a name I didn't recognize. Some guy from her office. Just a name that now had the power to shatter everything. "How long?" I asked, my voice cold. Only a couple of times, she said, like that was supposed to make it better. It wasn't serious. I swear, it didn't mean anything. Didn't mean anything? I repeated, barely recognizing my own voice. You had some guy in our bed. In our fucking bed, Amanda. She flinched, but I didn't care. I wanted her to feel the weight of it, to understand just how deep she'd cut. I'm sorry, she whispered, finally looking at me with those wide, tear-filled eyes. But it didn't move me. Not now. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. That's the problem, Amanda. If it didn't mean anything, why the hell did you do it? Her silence said more than anything else could. And in that silence, I realized exactly what I needed to do next. The moment she went quiet, I knew I wasn't going to let this slide. The way she stood there, waiting for me to forgive her with those teary eyes, it made my blood boil. She wanted me to just swallow it, accept her apology, and move on like this was some kind of relationship hiccup. Not a chance. I didn't say anything. I walked to the bedroom, grabbed a duffel bag, and started stuffing clothes into it. I wasn't thinking straight, not yet. But I knew I wasn't about to sit there and play the part of the hurt husband while she begged for forgiveness. She followed me, trying to reason with me. We can work through this. People make mistakes. It doesn't have to end like this. I zipped the bag up and turned to her. You really think this is about working through it? You think this just blows over? You fucked some guy and brought him into our bed, Amanda. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. Her face fell. She knew she'd lost whatever control she thought she had. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I walked out the door without another word, leaving her standing in the hallway. My mind was racing with all the ways I could make her pay. I didn't want some drawn-out talk about feelings. I wanted her to hurt like I was hurting. I drove straight to her mom's house. The last place she'd expect me to go. I wasn't even sure what I was going to say, but I knew Amanda's parents thought the world of me. They always had, and they were obsessed with the image of us being the perfect couple. I was about to shatter that. Her mom answered the door, surprised to see me. Hey, everything okay? I didn't sugarcoat it. Amanda's cheating on me. I thought you should know. Her face went white. I could see the shock hit her, like someone had just pulled the rug out from under her feet. She stammered, trying to process what I just said. Wait, what? That can't be true. It is. She admitted it. I found another guy's stuff in our house. I don't know who she is anymore. Her mom's face crumpled, and I could hear her husband coming up behind her, asking what was going on. I didn't stick around to explain. I didn't want their sympathy, their apologies. I wanted them to feel the weight of what their daughter had done. And they would. Amanda's perfect little life was about to collapse in front of everyone. Next, I texted a few of our close friends. The ones who always thought we were the model couple. I didn't lay it all out, just enough to light the fire. Heads up, Amanda and I are done. She's been sleeping with someone else. Thought you should know. I knew word would spread fast. It wasn't about humiliating her, not entirely. It was about making sure she couldn't control the story. I wasn't going to sit by while she played the victim in all this. When I got back home, I didn't even give her a chance to speak. She was sitting at the kitchen table, head in her hands, trying to act devastated. But I didn't care. I wasn't there to hear her excuses anymore. I called your parents, I said, tossing my phone on the counter. And I told a few of our friends. You want to ruin everything? Fine. Let's make sure everyone knows exactly why it's falling apart. Her head shot up, eyes wide. You what? Why would you do that? Why wouldn't I? I shot back. You made your choices. I'm making mine. Now you get to live with them. Her face crumpled, real fear in her eyes now. She knew how much she cared about what people thought. About her image. I'd just ripped that away from her, and she could feel it. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Don't do this." But I was done listening. Done feeling sorry for her. I grabbed my bag, headed for the door again. As I walked out, I turned and said the one thing I knew would hurt her the most. "I'll send you divorce papers. You'll be hearing from my lawyer." The look on her face as I left was exactly what I wanted. She'd made her bed. Now she could lie in it alone. A week later, I was back at the house. Not because I wanted to be, but because we needed to talk. Divorce isn't something you just walk away from without sorting through the mess first. We'd avoided each other since I left that night, giving her time to stew in the fallout while I worked with my lawyer. But now, it was time to deal with it. I walked in and found her sitting on the same couch where I'd confronted her. She looked different, pale, worn out, like the weight of everything had finally settled on her shoulders. Good. I wanted her to feel it. "I thought we should talk," I said, keeping my tone flat. She nodded, not meeting my eyes. "Yeah, I guess we have to." I sat down across from her, arms crossed, waiting for her to start. I wasn't going to give her an easy way out. She had to face this. "I know I messed up," she began, voice shaky. "I don't know what else to say. I've been trying to figure out why I did it. And I don't have a good answer." I watched her, letting her words sink in. Part of me was curious if she'd come up with some explanation that made any sense. But mostly, I didn't care. There wasn't any excuse that would fix this. "I think," she continued, "I was just lost. I don't know how we got to this point. It wasn't something I planned, I swear. It just happened." That phrase again. It just happened. Like it was some accident she stumbled into, not a choice she made. I clenched my jaw, feeling that same anger rise up again, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Stop pretending like this just fell out of the sky, Amanda. You made a decision. You let someone into our life, into our bed, because you wanted to. I don't care why anymore. It doesn't change anything." She nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. I know it doesn't. But I still love you, I swear I do. And I want to fix this. If you just give me a chance, we could work through it. Please. I'll do anything." Her voice cracked on the last word, and for a second, I felt the weight of her desperation. But it didn't soften me. The truth was, I'd had time to really think. And the more time I spent away from her, the more I realized there was no coming back from this. Not for me. "I don't think you get it," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You broke something that can't be fixed. It's not about whether or not I still have feelings for you. It's about respect. Trust. And you destroyed both." She wiped her face, staring down at the floor like a child being scolded. I don't want to lose you. You already have." The silence stretched between us, heavy and final. I wasn't angry anymore. The rage had burned itself out over the past few days, leaving behind something colder. I didn't want revenge now. I just wanted out. "Are you really going to leave me?" she whispered. "I already left," I said, leaning forward. "You just didn't notice until now." She looked up at me, eyes wide, like she was waiting for me to take it back. But I didn't. I was done. I stood up, ready to leave the room and everything that came with it. "This isn't fixable, Amanda. You need to understand that. It's over." Her face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. But I didn't feel sorry for her. I wasn't here to comfort her or make it better. That wasn't my job anymore. "I'll sign the papers," she mumbled through the sobs. "But, can't we at least talk about this more? Maybe after some time?" "No," I said, voice firm. "This is final. There's nothing left to talk about." I turned to leave, hearing her break down behind me. But this time, I didn't stop. I didn't turn around. I walked out the door and into my new reality. Leaving that house for the last time felt like closing a door on a different life. I drove away without looking back, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. I didn't feel any of the satisfaction I thought I would. No sense of closure. Just a quiet, empty feeling settling in. The divorce papers were in motion. I'd taken steps to make it quick, clean, without dragging it out. It was done. But that didn't mean I was done thinking about it. Every night, I'd lie in bed, replaying everything, wondering how the hell I missed it. Wondering what I could have done differently, if there was a way to stop it before it all fell apart. But the truth? It wasn't about what I missed. She made the choices she did, and no amount of me trying to figure it out would change that. That's the part one finally started to accept. I had to let it go. The last time I saw her was at the lawyer's office. We signed the final papers, barely exchanged a word. She looked like hell, like the guilt had eaten her up from the inside out. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for her, but I couldn't. She made her bed, and I wasn't going to lie in it anymore. The chapter was closed. After that, I didn't hear much from her. Friends asked questions, of course. People wanted to know what happened, how we ended up here. I kept it simple: she cheated, it's over. No need for details. I didn't want sympathy. I didn't want advice. I just wanted to move on. And eventually, I did. It took a while, though. I'm not going to pretend like it didn't wreck me. The nights were the hardest, lying awake in that empty bed, realizing how quickly everything can change. One minute you're building a life together, the next, it's just you, picking up the pieces. But I learned something through all of it. Trust isn't something you give away lightly. Once it's broken, it doesn't just come back. And more than that, I learned I deserved better. It wasn't about punishing her anymore. It wasn't about revenge. It was about getting to a place where I didn't feel like I was the one who had to suffer for her mistakes. Looking back, I see things clearly now. There's no fixing something that's already broken beyond repair. You can try, sure. But it's like putting a cracked windshield back together. You can glue it, patch it, but the crack will always be there, waiting to shatter again. I've moved on since then. I didn't rush into anything new, didn't need to. I took my time, focused on myself, on rebuilding what she'd torn down. And now, I'm okay. I'm better, actually. Stronger. I don't regret walking away. In fact, I wish I'd done it sooner. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that staying in something toxic, something broken, only drags you down with it. You've got to know when to cut your losses and save yourself. That's what I did. And now, for the first time in a long time, I feel free.